Hello everyone and we're back to Peahce Interview. Now today we at the Peahce Project present a conversation with yogi Milorie. Milorie is a yoga instructor, tutor, and disability case manager. She is a Chinese adoptee who grew up in Canada. After graduating from college and studying overseas, she moved to Montreal. She's a dog lover and multilingual, knowing English, Mandarin, French, and more. She currently teaches yoga online and encourages students to be mindful of their physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being. Milorie was also generous to offer free yoga and mindfulness class free to the Asian community. She will be teaching at her healing session in regards to the surge of anti-Asian violence, and the event will start at 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time this Saturday, April 24th. Now, without further ado, join Peahce interviewer May as she talks with Milorie, who gave us insight on ways to start a yoga journey, some suggestions about being mindful during the pandemic, and her perspective of the yoga field. In 3, 2, 1.
Can you please tell me your name and what you do?
So my name is Milorie, and I am a yoga instructor, but I also have another full-time job, which is a disability case manager. I also am tutoring some kids sometimes during the week. I am also a big-time dog lover, although I don't have any because I live in a studio right now.
Oh. Wow, that's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, I've been a bit tired lately. I'm thinking of reducing my hours just to take more naps.
Can you tell me where you are currently located?
I am in Montreal, Canada.
And did you grow up there or did you recently move there?
So I moved here about 2 years ago. I grew up in a smaller town, which is, I would say, way more provincial, also way more, I was not going to say native, but way more French Canadian. The entire population is mostly Caucasian compared to Montreal, which is most multicultural, really known for its a bit like New York, its broad population, variety, and culture, which is something that was really attracting to me, especially as an adoptee. And unfortunately, with this COVID thing, I hadn't had the chance to discover the city so much. I have some favorite places, bars, and libraries, but I'm just waiting for these confinement and quarantine to be over to just start rediscovering the city a bit more.
Yeah, that is definitely unfortunate timing, but at least you have something to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I was reading up a little bit about you, and you had said originally you did many high impact sports, but then due to, I believe, an injury, you transitioned to lower impact and maybe yoga. Can you explain that transition from, high impact to now yoga?
So to me, it was very fluid. I started out doing, yeah, like you said, more impactful sport, especially gymnastics. It's a high impact because you have those jumps, and every time you jump to start a movement, whenever you land, if it's not perfect, then maybe you have a certain angle, and it's really, really hard to be perfect. Even Olympians, they're gonna have trouble having this perfect movement. Then you're gonna have an impact on your joints, on your articulation, on your muscles, and on a long time, especially on your spine, it can create some injury. So it's not like one big injury, like you were hurt or you had a broken leg, although it can happen. Sometimes it builds over time. A lot of people doing high impact sport, they're having a constant back pain. It's not only people who don't do enough sports, sometimes it's people who do high impact as well. Yoga, gymnastics, just like other sports I did, like a bit of cheerleading and a bit of synchronized swimming, they all to me are kind of part of the same family, as they're like artistic sports. They require flexibility, but strength. And yeah, they allow me to be kind of creative, such as dancing. And you have either the music or the movement. You're able to focus on your own body and the extension where you can get, or the posture you can go within your own body. You don't need to use like accessories. It's not like playing tennis, hockey, or anything like that. It's all within yourself, and that's something that I really enjoy. It's also to me part of I would say part of freedom, the freedom of movement. So a lot of people feel like they're a bit cramped. And we talked a bit earlier about mental health. And I think to me, it's a big component. I don't know how big it is, it could be to other people, but if you feel like kind of trapped with this quarantine, maybe like me, I'm living in a studio right now, which is one room. And outside it was snow. It was like minus degrees outside. And you don't want to go for so long because it's not a great weather and super cold. If on top of that, you have either pain or you feel like there's some movement that are out of your reach, then it's becoming more and more oppressive. Your environment is getting cramped up. But if you're practicing how to try new stuff with your own body, you can have a lot of fun, be upside down a little bit, and discover a new way of seeing your environment.
Wow. Yeah. That is all things we need right now.
Yeah.
Being active, being mindful, especially in quarantine time. So for people who either don't understand yoga, want to get into yoga, why do you think it is important for people to explore yoga or even do yoga?
So I don't think yoga is the one solution. Sometimes people present it as like, ooh, Sangral or something. It's a really great discipline that includes a lot of components that we could need for a mental, emotional, physical health. You can get all those benefits from something else. And if you hate yoga, like I won't be mad at you at all. But it's a great way to be more flexible, to relieve some back pain, for example, which you can get either from being sit too long or from doing high impact sport. It combines really well with other sports. I do a little bit of running. I've been trying out at boxing as well. And there's always this body part that may hurt a little bit. And in yoga, that's the opposite. There's no competition. You don't look at your neighbor and be like, oh, I wish I was like that. Well, you're not supposed to, but people still do it a bit. It's all about how you feel. And even some people like put their feet behind their head or something. It's always within your own limit and respecting your body, always without pain. You're always going to this thin line, which is stretching, but whenever you feel pain, you stop. So technically, if you're doing yoga right, you will never get injured from doing yoga. I also think it's really nice because it includes this whole emotional, mental, mindfulness dimension and spiritual as well for those who want to include it. I mean, a lot of people just, they don't necessarily do it. They're trying to do this a bit more fitness yoga, and that depends what you're looking for. But if you're looking in terms of relaxation, then it's like it creates a space in your own head. Sometimes you feel like your brain is cramped up. And I'm gonna be a bit rude, but I was gonna say it's cramped up with shit. There's like all this bullshit in your head screaming at you, and then you're like so overwhelmed by everything. And whenever you get into yoga, it's just you and your mat. It's you and nobody else, no other time, no before, after, no like next week this project is due, or I don't know if I'm gonna keep my job, or why am I financial at no. It's you and your own body. So the worst thing that could happen in your mind is like, oh, I'm feeling kind of uncomfortable right now. I can't wait for us to switch posture. Let's breathe. And this is just like a break from your brain, because whenever you sleep, of course your brain is at rest, but it's not a conscious break. And if you have an alarm at 7 a.m., you get up super early, you're just mad because you haven't slept enough, you don't feel rested, or you feel like you need a break. And watching Netflix is fine, but it's more of a distraction than an actual mental brain. You have to process all this sound, all this image coming up, all the story. You have to follow the stuff. And then even watching TV at some point can get a bit overwhelming if all you want is silence and rest. But that's what yoga offers you.
During this COVID time, this high anxiety time, even bringing our race, the hate crimes, the attacks. So being in this high anxiety environment, what can we do, in your professional opinion, and then in your own personal opinion, to work on our emotional and mental health?
So as a yoga instructor, if you want to go through that way, I think the emotional component of yoga, where you are more centered when you think about yourself, when you appreciate your own feeling, and also the acceptance. Sometimes you don't want to admit like how scared you are, how sad you are, maybe how affected or how angry you are. You're like, but I'm a nice girl. I'm a nice person. I shouldn't be afraid. I'm living like in a peaceful country, and then you refuse to admit your own feeling. I think that is something that you can work on at your own pace without judgment. That's the thing about yoga or about mindfulness overall. You observe without judging yourself, and you're like, it's okay, to have negative emotion. I don't have to be mad about myself or to repress them. I can live them, and instead of dwelling on them, then I'm going to try to do something about it, either by making me feel better, taking some time for myself, maybe stretching, moving in my body, going to feel great. But for some other people, it could be read a book, have a cup of tea, take a walk outside, do whatever makes you feel good. And it could also be like reaching out on groups online. I mean, the community in Montreal of Asian American, and adoptee is there. It's not super strong, but it's there, so definitely can reach out. I've been in a Facebook group, and the creation lately of a lot of Asian and adoptee group is like wonderful. Honestly, when I grew up, I wish I had that. Internet was just popping out. We had this flip phone where you kind of take half an hour to send a text. So internet was definitely not there yet, and I remember feeling so lonely. I was like, I wish there was other Asian people around me. I wish there was somebody that lives the same thing that I could talk to. And now we definitely can with this whole Facebook thing. So that's a great way of connecting, I think, if you ever feel lonely, if you ever feel like you need to reach out. And otherwise, consulting in psychology is also a great way of doing so. I think maybe we still have a stigma nowadays that like only crazy people go see psychologists or something, or it's like only whenever I get super super desperate, or in case of emergency only, yes, I'll need to consult. But it doesn't need to be like that. I mean, if you have this little anxiety down there, even if it's small, if you feel sometime, if you have some symptoms, physical or mental, like you're always in distress, like you're breathing with the shoulder and you're like always like you're running a flight of stairs, flight of stairs or something, then that's a good reason to consult, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So you had mentioned that you do have a full-time job, and then you're doing yoga on the side. And I looked through your Instagram and saw that you went through, I don't know, a couple hundred, what was it, 1 or 200 hours of training. So
Yeah.
how are you juggling having full-time job with your passion for yoga? And would you eventually move just to yoga, or would you maintain having these two things in your life?
So my employment history was a bit complicated. I graduated in 2019, looking for a job desperately, like every millennial or generation out there, feeling like there was a gap between employment and diploma. And I started having some like part-time job or student job that weren't paying so well. Sometimes some contracts that don't give any work conditions, and that was terrible. And then we entered COVID, and I was like, okay, so people are losing their jobs, and I have trouble finding my first entry level professional job. What can I do? And I stayed there. I had a little student job, and when we deconfined for the first time after the first wave, we innocently thought it wouldn't be a second or third when we were like, okay, COVID is over. That was something. And there was this yoga training. I've been wanting to do it for over 5 years or something. And I always pushed it away because I was like, oh, I'm a student. I don't have time. I don't have the money because this kind of training can be quite expensive and they're not subsidized or anything. So I always pushed it. And my boyfriend was like, you know what? You should do it. Like you've been talking about it for so long, and now is the time. What else are you gonna do? You can't travel, everything is closed. Like that's the time. So I registered, and it's a 200 hours condensed in 1 month. So I was just in a chalet, like in a house with all those girls doing their training at the same time as me. We had these amazing connection and share of emotions, thought, physical practice as well for the yoga. After a week or two, you're like, oh my, I can't take it. It's like 3 or 4 hours a day, but you're like, I love it, but then it's a lot. And I hoped I would be able to do it full time, but then we had the second wave of quarantining, following the second wave of COVID, and they closed all the studio in Montreal. So all the yoga studio were closed. We had these online stuff, but then most online studio don't allow you to work full time. The salary is not necessarily there. People don't pay the same prices, and that's normal for an online service where some in studio they can get the heat from a hot yoga, or they can get the personal adjustment in the presence of a teacher. So I didn't have any like full-time income, which is when I started tutoring. I was complementing both, trying to find hours just to pay rent. And then I found this amazing full-time job. I'm a really new disability case manager from a friend of a friend who talked to me about it. And now I really like it. So I'm just going to continue and see how it goes. Eventually, I would love to do yoga full time, but I know that because I'm a brand new teacher, I graduated only in 2020. It takes a certain time to find your niche and have your customer and find your place out there. So I'm really fine with continuing part time for now.
Wow. That is a crammed amount of time in
Yeah.
1 month. Wow. So going through the yoga training and trying to make a name for yourself and teaching, have you found that being an Asian American or a woman has any negative effects on you trying to make a career in the yoga field?
I don't think so, and I think it may be quite the opposite. Well, not completely the opposite, but just the yoga world is one of the most open-minded I've ever seen. Like you won't see it will be such a like an oxymoron to see a mean yoga teacher or a close spirit yoga teacher. Like if you have one, please don't continue with her. Like just don't. If she makes you feel bad or he makes you feel bad, just find another one. They're not supposed to make you feel like that. Even between colleagues and even my bosses, I was like, okay, from the outside, it looks great. Just like do TV shows, like where you see all the lawyers and stuff, it looks amazing. But when you come in real life, it may be some crap, right? But in fact, every of my colleagues is so nice to me. There's no competition, and my bosses are really comprehensive. Like if you stay professional, obviously, if you get a good class, a good service, you're nice to customers, and most owners are super comprehensive. And I mean, there is a lot of yoga instructor out there, but the world need it so much that it's not a reason to like bash someone else or go against someone else. They're like, okay, if you wanna do more hours, we'll find a way. You can. There's so much creativity and opportunity that you can build on your own. So there's no really place for competition, and it's a job that you can do as a freelance as well. You can have your own clients or build your own business really easily, way more than like when you're supposed to be employed somewhere. So I think 2020 and going in the future as well, people are getting more and more of a freelance kind of work, and it's a great opportunity because you're not necessarily in competition with a person with the same qualification for the same job and trying to look good in front of your boss because you want a vacation and then the other one wants the promotion and stuff. It's not about promotion. Like there's no promoted yoga teacher. Like yeah. and I'm super happy to attend my colleagues' classes, and I'm super happy when I see them because I know they're gonna be nice. If there's a criticism to be made, it's not out of being mean or angry. It's mostly like I'm gonna reflect about it and be like, oh, well, right, like I should do it like that. I should try this. Or whenever I'm in their class, I see some amazing stuff that they do, and I'm like, oh, I would love to try teaching that, or I would love to try it overall because that's something I may not have thought about.
Wow, that's a great environment to be in.
Yeah.
So thinking about yoga, there's a lot of different styles of yoga. People have lots of thoughts on yoga. Are there any myths or preconceived thoughts that you would like to debunk or tell people that it's not true?
A lot. So first of all, like I said earlier, yoga is not a competition. You see that girl in the front row doing the split or putting her feet behind her head or whatever. You're not in competition with that girl. Good for her. Like she's doing that. Maybe she's practiced for 10 years or maybe like that's her first time. It doesn't matter because the only reason why you should be here is to focus on yourself. Like I'm trying to give as much explanation as I can, and it's hard in this COVID time or online, but as much explanation as I can that technically, if you're not too bad with spatial coordination, you could do my class eyes closed. And that means if I say like raise your hand or do that with your arms or something, then the eyes closed will allow you to perceive your body and the feelings that you have inside without all those things around. You don't need mirrors all over the room to practice yoga. It's a thing that people love for alignments and so, but just by closing your eyes, just standing, like try to stand up and close your eyes without doing anything, without thinking to like what you have to do in the morning or what you're gonna eat for dinner, or without trying to move around and find something. You know, you don't even need to be on one foot or be head down or whatever. Just stay there and then you'll feel it. You'll feel the contact of the ground under your feet. You'll feel maybe you're bending forward. Maybe your weight is all back and you have to work on your heels a lot to maintain your straight up. Maybe you feel your shoulders are going in a certain direction. One is higher than the other. Maybe they're curved in front. You'll see maybe you're standing on the outside foot or in one leg more than the other. And those are all the things that this is what yoga is for. It's not to show off with these amazing yoga clothes and postures. It's all about feeling what is inside. And yoga all of the time, eyes closed, is maybe not the best way of practicing it, but once in a while, it's a really, really good opportunity to try it out. And not there's two opposite myths as well. One of them is that you must be really flexible to do yoga, and this is not true. Like literally, a rock could do it because since the goal is to feel your body, to have either new sensation and be aware of who you are as a physical being, think you don't need to be flexible. Even if you don't put that feet up there, or even if you don't do that posture like perfectly, nobody will ever be perfect. So just start where you are and practicing and building over time. You will become more flexible. Not because like you're forcing it and pushing it and it's hard, just because you're practicing it and relaxing. So most of my flexibility posture, I see it's not because people see flexibility as a against your body kind of movement. It's like I'm forcing my leg to go all the way up there. But it's not necessarily that. Most of the time, it's just resting, literally resting. You lay down on your mat in a certain posture and then you wait. And then you feel yourself breathing and you try to avoid thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner and you listen to like the instructor in front or whatever. And then you see your muscles relaxing like naturally. The more you wait, the more relaxed your muscles are gonna be. And that's just what we're getting at. And then some other people think yoga is a sport for girls. It's just like it's not even a sport. It's just like this fashion thing. It's just like walking basically. And I think it depends the kind of yoga you're doing. And there's definitely some classes that are more about resting and training. I'm thinking about there's like this yin yoga and restorative yoga that are definitely like a big hug for your body. But there's also those power and fit and reaching toward a bit more physical engagement in this yoga. And a lot of those people saying that, I don't want to generalize, but I will. A lot of these people are guys. or like their girlfriend is doing yoga and they're like in the sport team, they're like, I don't do no yoga. Like it's not even a sport. I'm playing ball. Or like I'm doing boxing, I'm doing hockey. And then okay, bring them one time to yoga, they're gonna sweat their life and you're gonna laugh at them the entire time because they're not gonna be able to do any of what you're doing because you've been there like a couple times and they haven't. And probably they're not used to this kind of movement because it's not about the muscle you can show off most of the time. It's about the muscle you will never see. Like those deep down muscle in your back, under your leg, where nobody sees them, they're super important because they're maintaining your body together. And if you never stretch it or never um, muscle it, then you may have some pain. You don't know where it's coming from. And then at one point you realize this deep, deep muscle that you've never touched your entire life. That's where it's from.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to think about. That's true. It does work on muscles that you really maybe won't be able to ever show off.
People like underestimate posture. A lot of them, they're like, I want big biceps. I want like glutes and stuff. Okay, it looks nice. But then maybe you work so hard on your shoulder and bicep that you end up staying like that all the time. And then you develop back pain because you're always standing shoulder forward. And then you're wondering why does it hurt so much? Not cool. But you have good biceps though. You look great. You know?
Yeah, that very good food for thought. So let's think about, if you could have your own studio, what kind of yoga would you like to personally teach? As well as what kind of yoga are you teaching right now at the moment?
I'm teaching a bit of everything. Since I just graduated, I want to get on hand on as much thing as possible just to familiarize myself with any kind of people practicing yoga as well as any kind of class I could give. Um, People say I have a relaxing voice, so I've been given a lot of relaxing classes, and I do enjoy that. I love giving this feeling to people where at the end of the class, you have this final posture, which is like the corpse. It's called Shavasana, and you just lay on your mat and do absolutely nothing. No, none of your muscle is engaged, and you just rest there. And then if you're trying to do that right now, it's probable that it's going to be quite kind of hard. You're thinking, oh, it's just resting. Like, why would it be hard? And then you try it at home and you'll be like, you can't stop thinking about something, about your day, about whatever is going around. You can't stop from feeling this like little itch somewhere. And you're like, I just want to scratch that. Then you scratch it and then it's itchy somewhere else. And then you just want to crack it a little bit or turn around and you're like, oh, it's a little bit uncomfortable. But once you've done this hour of yoga, would it be power or relaxation? At the end, you have this moment all for yourself when you just lay there and rest and it feels so good. And that's the feeling I love to give to people. It feels like a weight has been lifted off of their body and they're like, ah, you know. That's the thing I love about it.
That's great. I do remember that. I haven't taken that many yoga classes. But I do remember like at the end you're like, oh thank God, I could just rest.
Yeah. Sometimes it's because the intensity of the movement, physical engagement, just like any other sport. And sometimes it's also because of the emotional and relaxation mind that you have been doing.
Yes, all good points. So for people who either want to be a yogi like you are, or are just wanting to try out yoga for the first time, what is some advice you'd want to give them?
Um, I would say trying to have no expectation. So if you already want to try, give it a try. A lot of people are like, I feel like I want to try, but I think I'm not. And then they insert a certain adjective and then they would finish by enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not flexible enough. I don't have enough time. I don't, they would find all those excuses because they're just shy. They just don't want to fail. But let me tell you something, you cannot fail at yoga because trying is succeeding. So just go ahead, try it and see if you have fun. And maybe a little bit hard. Don't be hard on yourself. Like if you don't get all those postures, there's a lot of names. And it took me a while to understand all of them. And if you don't have this posture, you don't even get what it's for, and you haven't heard like where you place your leg, it's fine. Just look at your neighbors and it will probably know. And if you feel completely clueless, that teacher is going to help you. Don't worry.
Oh, okay, good. Definitely good advice. Things that I should think about because I've definitely made up lots of excuses. So as we wrap this interview up, is there anything that you want to tell the listeners or the readers about what you're up to, or anything else that we didn't cover that you think is important for people to know?
Well, I think I would say in this pandemic time, yoga or no yoga, one of the most important things, and people will say it over and over again, is to take care of yourself in a good way. So just drinking bunch or smoking bunch or doing all those kind of activities will relieve in the moment. But you have this little voice inside who's like, you're thinking about doing that for the rest of your life, Milorie, because I don't feel like you can handle it forever. And then there's this other voice who's like, have you thought about, going for a walk, exercising, reading a book? And then your conscious self would be like, I don't have time for that. I'm trying to work here. I'm too busy being stressed out. Yeah, take the time for you. Take this like 10 minutes to make a face mask or something. Take it. It's for you. You are entitled to take time for yourself.
Make sure to follow Milorie to gain peace, wink wink, of mind, to stay tuned for her website release, and make sure to register for our healing session if you'd like to come. If you would like to learn in a live yoga class of hers and discuss how you've been processing injustices toward the Asian community with others, this space may be for you, and you can register in our Instagram bio. Thank you for watching, and peace out.